But officially, I can't call the meeting to order.
No, or approve the consent agenda, but you can do reports.
Okay, let's do reports. We'll start with Dr. Richards.
Okay.
Because I do not have one tonight, other than the meeting starts at 7.
Good evening. This morning, we received some, Mr. Likely referred to the meeting we had last night at Miller Driscoll, which was a good meeting. Not well attended, but the people who were there participated fully, and I think some good information was distributed. This morning, we received results from the Radon retesting at Cider Mill, Millbrook, and the high school that was performed back in February by Cardno ATC. The purpose of this monitoring was to evaluate the airborne levels of radon in comparison to the EPA recommended exposure limit of 4.0 picocuries per liter of air. The testing that was conducted, we conducted testing in 10% of the rooms that have contact with the ground, so it's not a second, it's just a first story testing. And it was conducted, I said February, I beg your pardon, it's March 5th through March 7th by Mr. Neil Freuden, who's a licensed member of the National Radon Management Group and a qualified professional for radon testing in Connecticut. All the testing that was done is in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes, the Connecticut Department of Health Radon Program Guidelines, and guidance from the Environmental Protection Agency. The results were as follows. At Cider Mill School, the laboratory results showed that all tested rooms were below 4.0 picocuries per liter, with the highest result measuring at 2.4. At Millbrook, laboratory results showed that all tested rooms were below 4.0, with the highest room measuring at 0.9 picocuries per liter. Wilton High School, the laboratory results for the athletic office and the field house measured 7.4 picocuries per liter, which is in excess of the EPA recommended action level. No other results for radon reevaluation were above the recommended action level, and the range in the other rooms tested at the high school was from 0.3 to 1.9. So with one exception, in these three schools, the athletic director's office, the results were well below the action levels that are the standards. Based on this, the only recommendation is that we hire a radon mitigation firm that's certified by various agencies to reduce radon levels in accordance with this report. We have already, we had a call from the company a couple weeks ago about this one result, and we went ahead and scheduled a firm will be in early next week to give us some consultation as to what steps we need to take to mitigate. So we're on that. A copy of the full report will be on schools and district websites tomorrow. So the full report, it's quite lengthy, but you can access it if you're so inclined on the website. The second piece of news I think is good news. I've been reporting on a board favorite, the Uniform Regional School Calendar, and staff favorite, I'm sure, that the legislature had passed. There was a bill, House Bill 5559, which delays the required implementation. For 1 year from the school year starting July 1, 2015 they're moving it to the year starting July 1, 2016. So the next year, if districts are so inclined, they can follow the regional calendar. Our board approved the calendar last year for 2014-15, so we will remain, I would assume unless the board chooses otherwise, with that calendar for next year. This legislation puts it off till 2016-17. It further allows delay if the school district has an existing employee contract. Some of the contracts that we have with our bargaining units, for example, the custodians, it may have certain days, a holiday, say Columbus Day. And if the board were to choose, or if the regional calendar were to say Columbus Day will henceforth be a school day, that would be in conflict with your collective bargaining agreement. So in those cases, it allows for a delay till 17/18. So one can hope, I know based on the comments we've heard around the board table and from some staff, that maybe the delay will buy some time to allow cooler heads to prevail. But that's where we are at this point. So I think that's kind of good news.
Wonderful. Glenn, if it's all right with you.
Yeah,
Sure.
question. Did they indicate or say why they thought the level was so high?
I have not heard an explanation on that, and that'll be something that we'll pursue with them. We're going to talk with the mitigation company too about is there in some cases, if it was in a classroom, you'd say, well, what are the adjacent rooms going to be like? In this case, as you know, the only adjacent room is the field house. And so we're going to ask, one of the things the expert, I talked to them today, we communicated with them, and they said that the mitigation people will talk about the effect of mitigating in the office, and that may have some effect on the field house. I don't know, given it's 35,000 square feet, and in a big space like that, whether it will be, how that will be impacted, but we'll pursue that.
Thank you very much.
My apologies.
No sweat.
You can dock my pay.
With the two of yours permission, I'd like to shuffle the agenda slightly. What we've done, Chris, is we've moved forward with reports, which we can do because they're not action items. But seeing that there are so many staff here from Cider Mill, I'd like to actually move the literacy coaching model up ahead of both the committee reports and also the district staff development report, so that we can relieve these folks.
Actually, there's an order to the presentation, so if we could start with the staff development one, it would move into the Cider Mill one. They are related,
Okay,
if that's okay.
as long as it's okay with folks back there. Okay, then let's do that, and once we get done with both of those, we'll do our committee reports. So,
Okay, so now-
please.
Okay. Just make sure it's... All right, so good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm going to provide an overview of the district's 2013-14 staff development report. And I believe you all received a copy of that last Friday? Yes? Okay.
We did?
Yes, we did.
Did you? I didn't know this.
I did.
We got it here.
No, it was emailed out.
You got the first part of it.
Yeah.
Is that
It wasn't.
Okay, well, we will make sure to post it on our website following this meeting.
It's already up there.
Okay, good.
Nice job.
All right, so I wanted to start by thanking Martha Russell, our instructional leader for staff development, my secretary, Nancy Doncaster, and all of the building administrators for their work in gathering and organizing this information for this report. And I do want to thank all of the instructional leaders in the district and the building administrators for their help in developing and implementing what I think is a very comprehensive array of professional learning opportunities for our staff this year. I do think that the teachers in Wilton are very lucky to have a leadership team. Hi, Lori.
Excuse me, Chuck.
No problem. Very lucky to have a leadership team that values their professional growth and works so hard to make sure that their time is spent in meaningful and productive ways. Speaking of the report, if you had a chance to leaf through it, you probably noticed that there's a great deal of detailed information, which I am not going to repeat tonight in this report. But what I am going to do is I'm going to highlight some of the focus areas and activities that the staff engaged in this year, both in district and off-site. And then I want to spend a few minutes talking to you about what we see, how we see professional learning evolving over the next few years. Okay, let's see if this works. But before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the purpose of professional learning is and what our beliefs are about what an effective professional learning program looks like. I think we all agree that the quality of instructional practice is the single most important factor in student learning. But the real question is, how do we support our teachers in mastering and managing all of the complexities involved in teaching and learning? That's especially true given the wide range of subject areas that we deal with, the diversity of our student body, and frankly, the varying levels of understanding and proficiency among our staff. And you layer on top of that the fact that our understanding of professional practice is constantly evolving as we gain more insight into how students learn best. And so the short answer to that question is professional learning needs to be comprehensive, it needs to be differentiated, it needs to be ongoing, and it needs to be directly related to the issues that teachers are facing with students who are sitting in front of them. And we do that by putting into place a process of inquiry and reflection, where teachers can challenge their assumptions about teaching and learning, where they can experiment with instructional strategies, and where they can deepen their understanding of their content subject, the students that they're working with, and how those students learn best.
Chuck, I apologize.
Sure.
I sent that text to Laura Schwem to see if she could hear you well enough from home,
Yes.
and she said she can't. So I think you're going to have to use a microphone.
Oh, okay.
That means the rest of the town can't hear you either.
Okay. I was really trying to project.
Otherwise, I wouldn't text at the table. I apologize.
Is that on? Is that on?
Laura, if that's any better, let us know.
Can you hear me, Laura?
It's for the TV.
Oh, okay. So how do I know if it's on? She'll tell us?
I'm sure she will.
Okay. Okay.
The wonders of technology.
Okay, so in 2013-14, the teachers in Wilton participated in a wide variety of professional learning activities across all subject areas and levels, but there were some definite focus areas for professional learning this year. Some of those areas were directly aligned to our strategic improvement plan, while others addressed mandates from outside the
She
system.
reports that that's much, much better.
Good, okay. Those mandates we tried our best to fit within our strategic plan as best we could. And that first area up there, the teacher evaluation process, is what I think is a good example.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
I think teacher evaluation process was the major focus of professional learning this year. You know, teachers are used to being evaluated, but they needed a great deal of support in learning the particular requirements of this new system and in understanding the instructional vision that the plan put forth. So we spent a great deal of time at the district, building, and department levels helping staff understand the requirements of the process, things like goal setting, the observation cycle, mid-year and end-of-year conferences, how to develop a professional learning plan, collect data, write an end-of-year reflection, and all of this associated paperwork with the process. And we frankly, for all of us, had a bit of a learning curve in terms of how to use the technology to support that process. And I think I mentioned to you that we've made a decision to move to a new system that we're hopeful will make the process a little bit easier. In terms of content, the district made the decision to focus on one particular indicator in the teacher evaluation process, and that was called Instruction for Active Learning, which helps our students develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills. So at the building levels in particular, we did a lot of work on helping teachers to understand how to engage students in tasks that will help them to construct knowledge in meaningful ways. I think the challenge for us moving forward is helping teachers, all teachers, understand all of the indicators, and I believe there are upwards of 20+ indicators. But that will be based partially in terms of the baseline data that we collect this year on teacher performance. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I do want to take this opportunity to compliment the building administrators for the thoughtful way they supported staff in making the transition to this new evaluation process. It could have potentially created a lot of unhappiness among the staff, but it didn't. And I attribute that to the systematic and supportive way in which the building administrators rolled that out for staff. So, thank you. Another area that we focused on was safe school climate. On November 5th, which was the district staff development day, all secondary staff received training from Dr. Bernstein in school violence prevention. And they also received training from Andy Bellick from Shipman and Goodman on what's known as protected class harassment, discrimination, and bullying. Dr. Bernstein also met that day with the threat assessment teams from Millbrook and the high school and provided them with an advanced level of training in threat assessments. Of course, all of the staff received mandated training in bullying prevention at the building level during building staff development days. A third area that we focused on was our continuing work on Common Core state standards. At the elementary level, that involved work on comprehensive literacy and was conducted by our consultant, Jen Saravallo, throughout the school year. And we also provided training in math, and that was done by consultants from the Math in Focus program. And that was done during both the district and the building staff development days. At the secondary level, most of our work on the Common Core was completed during summer curriculum work. But I do want to mention that we do have a team of Common Core state standards coaches, which is comprised of staff from all of our buildings who have been attending state-sponsored training on the Common Core, both this year and that will continue into next year. And their role will be to gather information, bring it back to the staff, disseminate it, and support their colleagues in learning more about the Common Core. An associated area of focus was the SBAC, the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, for grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. Teachers in those grades completed a series of online modules in test administration, which we needed to extend and refine during our own professional time. The modules are okay. You know, this is the first year of the SBAC, but we found that we needed to take that information and extend and refine it for our staff during our own staff development time. I do want to note that the final full-day staff development day, which was February 13th, was canceled due to weather. But we did make up that time by extending our faculty meetings to include professional learning and allowing our staff to complete some of these online required modules on their own time.
Do you have any feedback on how that worked out?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any feedback from the staff on how that worked out?
I think they appreciated the fact that they could complete that training on their own time when it suited them rather than sitting in a faculty meeting and watching it. But the quality of the training left them with many questions because the training was not complete. Again, this is the first time that we're administering the test. And so we did spend some of our own professional learning time. You know, the administrators went through the test administration manual and developed their own materials to kind of clarify and extend the learning in those modules. And I believe that the State Education Department, or Smarter Balanced actually, has received some feedback from states on how to improve those modules. So moving forward, I'm hoping they'll be better. Technology is an area in which we always do a lot of training. Much of it this year focused on helping teachers to learn new applications, such as the teacher evaluation software, and in learning to refine their use of existing technologies, such as the use of smartboards. I think the most innovative thing we did in terms of technology this year was the iPad iGenius Institute, as Matt calls it, which involved groups of teachers from each of our schools completing a series of trainings that we conducted in collaboration with Cooperative Educational Services, and which helped these teachers to learn ways in which to use the iPad to transform classroom education. It was very successful, and we're already seeing the fruits of that training in our classrooms. I did want to mention that that was sponsored by the Wilton Educational Foundation, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank them for the generous support on behalf of the district and on behalf of the teachers who participated in that institute. Okay, so in terms of special education, all general ed teachers completed mandated training in special education on the District Staff Development Day. They learned about the nature and needs of exceptional children and how to work effectively with special needs children in their classrooms. All special ed teachers on that day also completed mandated training on IEP development and how to conduct PPT meetings. Of course, the special ed department and the individual buildings also offered a variety of different professional learning activities on special education throughout the school year. TEAM is a program that supports beginning teachers in meeting the requirements for provisional certification. They need to complete a series of professional learning activities and reflection papers under the guidance of a mentor teacher. The district also offered several supplementary voluntary professional learning activities in cooperation with CES again for both mentor teachers and beginning teachers. And our administrative team also engaged in a great deal of professional learning. In fact, all of us who evaluate teachers spent a week at CES this summer learning about the process, learning how to script observations, and having our proficiency assessed. We also spent a good portion of our summer leadership retreat extending our learning and refining our learning of teacher evaluation and planning for the rollout of the process. All of the administrators in the district also spent an afternoon with Joanne Freiberg, Dr. Joanne Freiberg, who is the state ed consultant for bullying. And it was a very productive time, a very productive session where she provided us with some updates on the legislation surrounding bullying and safe school climates, and actually provided us with a lot of tips on how to approach both of those things, safe school climate and bullying prevention. Andy Bellock also provided training to all of our staff. She's from Shipman and Goodman, all of our administrative staff on how to conduct appropriate, effective, and legally defensible bullying investigations. And finally, all of our new administrators, and you know that we had a number of new administrators this year, also completed a series of trainings to support new administrators at CES. And the district provided the mentoring component to that training. And so those are the focus areas for 2013-14. The report does contain a lot more detailed information, particularly about areas other than the focus areas. Now, in terms of off-site professional learning, the report includes information on the conferences and workshops that the teachers attended this year. Those conferences and workshops were supported through a combination of district and WEF funds, and were offered by a combination of public, private, and professional organizations. And again, I would like to thank WEF for their support of this particular type of professional learning. The staff who access this type of learning are often what I would call singletons who have very kind of niche needs, like AP calculus or a secondary art teacher who teaches photography. As a district, we don't have a critical mass of those teachers, so it's very difficult for us to offer in-house training that's deep and meaningful. But thanks to WEF, we are able to hook them up with professional organizations where they can go and meet other people with similar needs and receive that kind of deep learning from experts. So again, I thank WEF for that. I do think it's important to note that we were very careful to only approve attendance at these workshops if they somehow align to either district building or program strategic priorities. Okay, so now regarding the future, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a new future for professional learning. And I wanted to start with the issue of terminology. You know, over the years, a number of terms have been used to describe how teachers acquire and apply new knowledge and skills. Terms such as staff development, professional development, in-service training, continuing education, and so forth. In keeping with current practice in the field of education, I would like us to start to use the term professional learning more consistently moving forward. That is the term used by the State Education Department and by all of our professional organizations, and I just think it's important for us to be on board with that. So next year, rather than a staff development report, we're going to have a professional learning report. I know that sounds like a small point, but it's an important one for me.
It's very important for me that we follow the state guidelines and everything that we do.
Good. So, as I mentioned in the report, the State Education Department recently disseminated draft guidelines to assist districts in developing what they call a effective and comprehensive professional learning system. And these are the terms that they use to describe an effective system. One that supports collective responsibility, shared methods, led by teachers, administrators, coaches, individual and small group work, job embedded, and linked to teacher evaluation. What they're really trying to do here is they're trying to make professional learning a more personalized process. And that has some pretty significant implications for how we approach developing and implementing professional learning. You know, the traditional conference-like days in which we offer one-shot workshops that are designed to address individual needs or some program initiative are going to become less common. And they're going to be replaced by job-embedded, data-driven collaborative work among professionals who are seeking to address issues that they're facing with specific groups of students. And so the Wilton Professional Evaluation and Learning Committee, the PEAL Committee, is in the process of aligning our current professional learning plan to these guidelines. And so the way this is going to work going forward is that individual teachers, in collaboration with their evaluator, are going to set individual personalized areas of focus with associated action plans for professional development that will improve their professional practice. And that's going to be based, again, upon evaluator feedback. Those plans will then be implemented throughout the school year, either individually or in collaboration with colleagues, and will involve things such as peer coaching, interclassroom visits, web-based learning, and a variety of different collaborative arrangements with colleagues. This new vision of professional learning really is one of a problem-solving process where teachers engage in discussions and actions with colleagues that center on content and pedagogy, and then involve a lot of peer and administrator feedback. It also involves an analysis of how professional learning has impacted their own practice and also how it has impacted student learning. And that will take a form of an end-of-year written reflection where teachers will provide evidence of how their actual practice has changed and how that has impacted student learning. And
Could
so
you
the-
explain what kind of information might be available to assess that evaluation?
Well, what kind of evidence they'll produce?
It sounds like it's a self-assessment.
It's a self-assessment, but they will be providing actual data about how their performance has changed. So I can give you an example.
Yeah, examples of data elements.
Right. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to improve our ability to implement small group instruction. We would develop a rubric or a checklist that will delineate the criteria for what good small group instruction looks like. We will do a pre-test of how the teacher meets those criteria. They will engage in professional learning throughout the year, and then there will be another assessment of how this teacher does in terms of that checklist or rubric of small group instruction in order to determine growth, whether they met more of the criteria. Associated with that, they will also be providing pre- and post-test information on student academic growth that is related to small group instruction.
But not the results of tests given to the children.
No, it will be.
It will.
Yes. Now, those tests don't necessarily have to be standardized achievement tests. It may be, again, a rubric. If the rubric measured writing, it may be what we call the F&P, which is the Fountas and Pinnell assessment of how students progress through the levels of reading proficiency, and things
And
like
this will
that.
be implemented for the next school year.
We're actually doing some of it this year as well.
We'll have some reasonable summary analysis and metrics sometime this time next year or
Yes.
maybe next June.
Yes. As a matter of fact, the Peel Committee, in order to support this transition, will be collecting and analyzing information on trends in teacher performance based upon teacher evaluation data, as well as trends in terms of goal setting and professional learning plans. That will help the district to determine and prioritize our own professional learning offerings. That committee will also be working with the district to make sure that teachers have the time and the resources they need in order to engage in small group and individual professional learning. And to that end, the committee is also in the process of developing a resource guide, kind of a repository of best practices that will include the rationale and research that supports those practices, some exemplars at different levels, as well as non-exemplars of what the practice looks like, as well as some written and electronic resources that can be used for professional learning. I want to say that the committee believes very strongly and has identified peer coaching and time for collaboration as areas in which as areas for future growth for the district. And so I look forward to working with the new superintendent, the Board of Education, and the school community next year to help us move in the direction of moving in those directions.
You had mentioned that previously.
Yes. And I've been able to gain consensus among the committee as well. Before we take questions, I just want to mention that the presentation that follows this presentation was specifically designed to give you an idea of what this new vision of professional learning should look like.
Hence having to follow.
Yes.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah. What do you think it should be, or what is really the one true measure of the success of, or the success of the outcomes of professional learning?
I think there are two ways that you have to measure the success of professional learning. One is the impact on instructional practice, and the other has to be the impact on student learning.
Okay. So, let's deal with the second one.
Student learning.
Student learning. Because it strikes me, number one, this is overwhelming. I mean, I looked at the schedule for next year. I think you have 4 days set aside next year. and perhaps there are other ways and other times that you do things to get all this done, but when do we drive the stake in the ground and establish our baseline for where our students are today, okay, and what are those metrics? And we need to drive the stake in the ground now. We have X number of students performing at this level, X number and it may be by subject matter or whatever it may be. And then the real test of all this is a year from now, has the needle moved? And 2 years from now, has it moved even more? So I would be curious to know, what are the baselines for our students now? What data do we have? i.e., of all of our students that take AP exams, what percentage score 3? What percentage score 2, 1, 4, and 5? By subject matter, by teacher. And the true measure of are these teachers improving and getting better would be that those numbers move forward and move up. And if we have that data now that we can say, all right, draw the line here, because going forward, that has to change.
Well, I think you're asking a complicated question because there are,
Well, okay.
but let me try to address it.
Okay.
There are different levels of assessment information depending upon the level of user. So for instance, we have district level information. And I think the question at the district level or at the board level is, are enough of our students meeting standards? And that information is usually provided through state standardized testing. It used to be the CMT, and now it will be the SBAC. And that's what that type of test is designed to measure and to provide that kind of information, because those are the kind of decisions that a board and a district needs to make. There's a level under that that is designed more for the building and the program level. And those are known as interim benchmark assessments. And they tell us which students are meeting standards and which students are not meeting standards, so that we can move into things like the SRBI process or differentiation of instruction, so that we can help drive changes at the programmatic level to help large groups of students. The bottom level is what's known as the classroom level. And the information that assessment, those assessment instruments provide us is what's next in the learning for our students. That's very continuous information. It measures all different standards and objectives. So when we are setting goals for students through this process, we're really living more at the classroom level, because we want teachers, those instructional practices affect what's next in the learning. So when you see goals, you'll see teachers using rubrics, checklists, diagnostic assessment instruments, and they will be doing pre and post tests of how their children are doing, so that we can gauge whether or not students are making sufficient progress. And teachers, in fact, have to set goals. And if they don't achieve their goals, they are rated lower. So it really depends upon the level of decision maker. I think at your level, this is my opinion, what you want to look at is whether or not enough of our children are meeting standards. And the state level tests are designed to help you to answer that question.
Well, unfortunately, right now, all of that's been blown up.
Yes,
Okay,
we are in the
so,
transition time, yes.
You know, we are, for the next 2 or 3 years, it's going to be 3 years before we'll ever have any valid measure of the success or how well this is doing. Okay? And the state that's all been blown up.
Yes.
So I would offer that we take great pride in our AP students and the AP courses that we offer.
Yes.
So one of the things that we have right now today would be to take the measure of how our students are performing today.
Yes.
And how they perform. We should have the data from last year.
We have years of data.
We have years of
Yes.
data. Are the students this year, when this year's AP results come in, have our students performed better than they did last year, and by what measure? And then next year, with all of this being done, I would clearly expect that that performance would improve even more. And I don't know how much more, I don't know what the objective is, but we've got all that data. We don't have to wait for state standards, because we'll be 3 years away
I'll
at
add,
least.
No,
I'll
but
add
I
to
would,
that,
I
too,
just do
and
want
say
to point
that,
out that that information is included in the annual testing report. We do report about how many students achieve at what different levels. And in fact, teachers are setting goals now for AP performance. They are doing some pre-testing and post-testing. So that information is available. And if you go back and look at the testing report that I presented at the beginning of the year, it does contain much of that information.
Well, I wasn't here for that, so I don't, okay.
We'll
But-
get your copy of that.
But we should have that, and that would be one of the easy measures,
Yes.
okay? And
I'm gonna key off something you said, though, and I don't think it's necessarily accurate to think that this board is going to look at our district's performance relative to those state standards and how we do against them. People move to Wilton to do well and above state standards. That's the level of expertise that we're looking for out of our school district.
And you're
100%.
absolutely right.
100% achievement is an appropriate minimum level. And then to AP courses beyond that. I think the parents of Wilton are looking for the best school district
Right.
money can buy.
You know, I think you're absolutely right, and I wasn't prepared to share this with you, but we are in the process of looking at that comprehensive assessment system. And I think for a district like Wilton, you're right, the state tests are kind of a minimum floor. What we need to have a conversation, about what this district values and what we want to see our students, and then have a conversation about how to measure that. I mean, things like creativity, persistence, all those 21st century skills, I think, are the direction in which we want to measure ourselves. But we're not at a point yet where our comprehensive assessment system includes measures, valid measures of those things. But we are working on it. I actually have a district data team with a subcommittee that's looking at this.
Well,
That's
interesting-
also one of the reasons, I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you remember my presentation on PADI, the Performance Assessment Design Initiative?
Riveting.
Riveting, I'm sure. But I have to tell you, that's the area in which a district like Wilton should be looking for information about how we're really doing.
You know, it's also why curriculum mapping is so critically important. You know, if we don't clearly understand and are able to articulate what we want our students to learn, we can't measure against that as well.
Right.
yeah, I totally agree. Your opening comment, I think there's nothing more important for students learning than incredibly well-qualified, well-trained, capable teachers.
Yes.
And it strikes me that the program that you've outlined, Patty, and this program, everything you're doing, it's like at least a day a month they need to be doing.
Yes,
Okay, not 4 days a year.
I agree.
And
so-
I don't know how we
Find the time.
Well,
I don't know how we find the time. I don't know
maybe
how we
I
do
wasn't
that.
clear about this, but
What was that?
No, I wasn't really clear about that. These full-day things need to go away. And we need to build time into our teachers' schedules so that they can meet on a regular basis and do this kind of work.
You'll get no disagreement from me.
Okay.
You're not going to get any disagreement from me.
Okay, however, that has budgetary implications.
And it also has contract
And
implications.
yes.
And there needs to be a give and take, and we need to find someplace in the middle.
Yes.
Got it.
Just trying to lay the groundwork for things that I'll be requesting in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as long as it's a team effort, I'm sure we can find a solution.
Yes, I do too.
My question has to do with teachers we'll be hiring in the future.
Yes.
Obviously, all of this, we have a large population of teaching staff that went through their college education prior to all the 21st century skills and instructional practices that we see in place now, and that's why we're doing all of this professional learning, to bring them up
Yes.
to speed and to today's practices, Common Core and so forth. What's your general sense and feeling, and I know, Rich Sanzo, you've been to some of the local colleges as well, doing some recruiting. How well are our universities preparing our future teachers so that we don't have to do all this professional learning when they come here? They would have gotten that in college.
Yes.
And be ready to hit the road running. What's
Well-
your feeling on that?
I'm just going to be honest with you.
Okay.
Teacher preparation programs do not have a good reputation. That has been an issue in the professional literature for decades now. Teachers very often learn their profession on the job.
And that's been historically true.
Yes. Now, I do have to say that many of our new teachers are much more familiar with this particular format for professional learning. And they are certainly much more attuned to how to access technology for their own professional learning. They've still got a long way to go in terms of actually applying their knowledge with the kids who are in front of them. And so we still need to support them in that. And you know what? It varies a great deal according to the particular school that they went to.
Our Director of HR
right.
has a comment.
Yes.
I accompanied Rich at the Yukon recruitment fair, and I also attended the alternate route for certification fair in Hartford. And these are people who are choosing education as a second career, and their preparation is different. The Yukon program, as Chuck began to say, is highly regarded in the state, and I think superintendents will look to Yukon candidates because they have had a record of being prepared in these areas. But the biggest difference, I taught in a master's program at UConn for teacher certification, and as I listened to them of the work that surrounded the seminar that I taught, it was full of reflection. And I think that's the difference, where teachers going through preparation programs are required to reflect on their practice. And I think as we move into the next portion of the meeting, you will see the success of what's happened at Cider Mill is because of incredible reflection that teachers are doing. So while they may not come in having experienced exactly 21st century skills, they're coming in with a mindset that part of our practice is to teach, to receive feedback, to be very reflective, and to write and articulate, how we did and what we need to do differently. So I think they're poised to come in, and sometimes you want to hire a teacher who is reflective, bright, knows a content area, and then pull them into this process and actually grow them with the priorities that we have in Wilton. So we look at every position individually, and Rich and I had a lot of discussion prior to the fair, during and after, and you look at the needs of a certain position in a school, and then where the success of the course has been, or where there's some areas that need to be addressed, and you hire a teacher to pick up on the next leg of the instruction for that class. So it's all individual. And I think we have tremendous support from, certainly from Gary and the board, that we will hire the best teachers. It's not about, we need to hire at a master's step 3, and it doesn't mean that the best teacher is always the one with the most experience.
We're also looking, Lori, because it is a frustration of wanting to hire people who have certain skills already in place. But to Mike's point, one of the things I've always believed in, it's, John Wooden, the great UCLA basketball coach, said you can't coach height. And I think you also can't coach intellect to a great degree. So we're looking for people with very sound content knowledge base, whether it's mathematics or reading or science, whatever it is, and to really find people who have stellar academic preparation. Because we can groom them with some of the pedagogy. If they don't have the content area, then I don't think they're going to be successful. I think the Teach for America model is flawed in some respects, but one of the core principles of Teach for America is hiring outstanding liberal arts college graduates and then giving them some training. I think it falls apart because they give them 90 days of training and then they throw them into the toughest schools in America. And some swim and some sink. But I think hiring these really, really smart, capable people with great academic backgrounds is really essential.
And over time, that will change our makeup. It's a tough question. Today, as you're going through this, and this year, and initially starting all of the changes and everything you see, what percentage of our teachers aren't going to make it, do you think?
I can't answer that because we haven't completed the process yet. And Mike might be better able to answer that.
And it's a tough question. It's a hard question. But clearly, there are teachers. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know what I'm doing. Don't tell me I have to
Old
change.
school thinking, right.
Okay. And that's a concern, because we don't have, eventually, they'll all, we'll rotate through, and the new ones come in, you'll get that transition, but we're, today, tomorrow, and the next day, we still have students that are with these teachers.
So, not to preempt the presentation, but I had the privilege of observing Jen Felipe, who is one of the coaches and consultants, as the number of teachers we can observe. And to your point about our experienced teachers and is there resistance to change, I watched her conduct a conference with an experienced teacher, a strong experienced teacher, and I listened to this teacher do a before and after with Jen. Jen structured the conference like a really excellent lesson, but the teacher was confident enough to say, here's where I was when we started this, and I wasn't quite sure I believed in the impact on my students, and then she just made connections and pulled it right to everything that had happened and why she was a better teacher and her students were more successful. And then she said, and I know that my next step is going to be. And Jen just asked really good questions and gave some organizers for her to present the information. So I have belief that that our teachers will embrace this, because you change practice before you change belief. We could spend 5 years talking about beliefs and why this is right, but we have people in the schools, administrators and teacher leaders, who are saying, this is right for kids and we need to move forward, so how can I support you? And I would say the majority of our teachers are going to embrace that, and things will change for the better. If you have a small number of teachers who are resistant, we deal with that in a different way. And I know that we are, and I know the principals are going to do that as well.
Okay, and that's good news.
The other side of that, let's take teachers who are coming into the system. We spent a lot of time this year with multiple meetings looking at our new staff and the level of success based on our observations and the principals. And do we need more information as we make decisions about their continued employment? And it was really levels and layers of conversation to look at them very carefully to see, do they have the potential to be successful? Not just are they improving, what's their rate of improvement? And sometimes you need to let a teacher move into the system and have that tremendous support, and you watch the rate. Because if the rate, and they embrace this coaching, then we know we're going to have a teacher with us who is a learner and wants to improve. And there may be situations where the expectations are not a match, what they bring and what we're looking for, and those are conversations we have also.
Yeah, and we've acted on those, so it makes sense to do that.
So, from the time that I've spent in the buildings, I believe in our teachers, of wanting to really do excellent work, and they're serious about that. And we have, wait till you hear this program, this coaching program, that is probably some of the best professional development that I've observed. As Chuck talked about, ongoing job embedded, that's very relevant for them because it's about their kids. So,
Yeah, I would add to that I had mentioned this process of inquiry and being very data-based. And I think one of the ways to approach people who are struggling with change is to ground it in actual data. And I think as I get older, I try to think that I've developed the emotional maturity to understand that when people are being obstreperous or resistant, that really what they're trying to tell us is that this is hard for me. And then my job is to figure out, how can I help you to make that change? And I know our coaches are very sensitive to that as well. So we, again, ground it in inquiry and try to place the emphasis on what the students' needs are and not make, practice is a very personal thing. So you have to be careful in how you navigate those kind of discussions. But if we do it effectively, we can move people along.
Great.
And I think there's a growing agreement as to, and what you're going to hear in a few minutes is, on what are some of the best practices, so that it's not, well, gee, I have this theory about teaching reading, and well, I don't agree with that theory. It's really having a common understanding of what's proven and using the research-based data to support that. And I think that's exciting to see.
Are there any other questions before we move on? Okay, I'd like to, thank you very much.
Sure.
I'd like to officially open the meeting at this point,
Oh, really?
having a quorum. We need to review and approve the agenda. And as we do that, I'd like a motion to amend the agenda such that the next item on the agenda is the literacy coaching model, followed by the committee reports, and then the policy 5125. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Here we go.
Okay, I would just like to introduce everybody.
Comments?
Consent agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Which is just the minutes.
It was just.
It's just the
this time,
minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry.
So I'd like to introduce some folks from Cider Mill. Jen Mitchell, the principal,
Nobody here.
a teacher, Kathy Wilson, and some of our instructional coaches, Jen Felipe, Lisa Riley, and Gina Dignon. And again, they're going to share with you an example of that.
Lovely AP Ellen.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Ellen Tuckner. How could I forget Ellen Tuckner? And again, they're going to try to give you an example of what this new vision of professional learning looks like. You need to talk into the microphone.
Yes. Okay. First, I just want to tell you how excited we are to be here. We're very proud of the work that each one of our teachers have undergone, along with our instructional leaders here with us tonight. One of the things that I value, and we kind of hinted on this, is the importance of professional capital in growing our teachers. Having effective teachers is the number one most important thing that we can do for our students. And we believe that what we're going to share with you tonight is one of the best ways that we can approach this. And with that, I turn it over to my team.
So, this is just, we'll actually change this title of this, Chuck, to be professional learning next year.
Good.
So, one of the things, when we were designing our professional development program for literacy in the area of reading, we went and we took a look at what research says about best practice for professional learning. And as you can see on the slide, and what a lot of people have been saying here tonight is that research says that teachers are the most important factor for in student achievement. It's an opinion, but it's also proven through the research. And the second point, and these are sort of tenets which we built our professional development program around, is that when teachers, and for students that matter, work towards crystal clear goals and are given specific feedback, results are staggering. And that's from a mega analysis that John Hattie did. So that just kind of outlines what effective learning looks like, so that you can actually have feedback in the moment and make adjustments. And so some people equate that or use the analogy of like a swimmer and a coach. The coach wouldn't give the swimmer feedback 2 weeks later to make an adjustment in his or her stroke. You know, he does it right then and there so the adjustment can be made and the learning can be applied. And so we're using that idea to guide our professional learning. And Chuck mentioned this, that, Linda Darling-Hammond says that, one-shot workshops don't work, and we need to have something that's sustained over time. Yes.
How current is the research?
I don't know all the dates, but John Hattie's is pretty recent, and Linda Darling-Hammond's is also,
3 years.
yeah, 2 or 3 years.
And if 5 years ago, what would have the research suggested? How different is this today from what might have been best practices 5 years ago? Or 8 years ago, 10 years ago?
I would say, sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say that the research on coaching and the impact that nested design of how teachers impact student learning has been in the 7 to 5 year range, I would say. Before that, there wasn't a lot of research done on how professional learning directly impacted student learning. And I would say it's been a progression, and I would say here we are today, and in the last 2 years, the research on coaching has exploded. It's very difficult to, in a true sense of research design, because it's nested. You can't say that what happens with teachers has a direct impact on students. It's not the way research is organized. So you have to make the connection between the two, but it is a hot topic these days.
Is most of the research unanimous? Is there a general consensus, or is there much contradictory research?
No.
There's a consensus.
I would just add to that the John Hattie book provides excellent reviews of all research studies in relation to many different areas. So if you're interested in getting a real sense of the research and the strength of the research, I commend you the book.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, this next slide really highlights the accumulation of research. And what this slide does is it looks at how we impact transfer of any professional practice. Chuck mentioned small group instruction. This year you're going to hear about conferring. How do we transfer the true attainment of new learning and new instructional practice? And what I want you to do is look down to the left and look across the top. So if you look at the traditional one-shot, the 4 days that we have, right, workshop presentation, there is a very low level of transfer. Looking across the top, you have an awareness, kind of basic understanding of what the topic or the concept is. So for example, what is small group instruction? What might it look like in a general sense? When you move to skill attainment, you start to learn the tools and techniques for how you might implement. But what we're really looking for is that transfer, which is in that last column. And what I want you to do is draw your attention down to, through the workshops, the one-shot deals, to the modeling, to the practice with feedback, all the way down to the coaching. And the transfer level just goes up to that 80-90%. And that's where that job-embedded coaching process is really the only way to go if we're looking for transfer. And what we're going to describe to you is what that looks like at our school this year.
So what we're talking about here is a broad stroke. Obviously, we're trying to build teacher capacity, and to your point earlier, why do we need to spend the time at the district level to do that? Because teaching reading is very complicated. And certainly teaching reading to the degree that we want to impact our students individually and be able to meet their needs right there, who they are, what they're up to, is very complicated. So we need to look at how to do that effectively. So we start with the bringing in of a very expert reading consultant named Jennifer Saravallo. She's written many, many books on teaching reading. And she's come in and she's been with us. This is our second year. We had contracted with her for 3 years. And we go and we watch Jen do what we want to try and do ourselves. So we watch her do it. We go into classrooms. We try it ourselves with her in the classroom. But now this is what really makes the difference. After Jen, we spend the day with Jen, and she leaves. The coaching piece is the piece that draws the connection and draws the string to help us really own it. So there are coaching cycles, and you'll hear about that. The teachers, the coaches and the teachers work together in their classroom with their kids, practicing the very thing that we spent the day working with Jen Saravallo on. And we do that over many, many days. So to your point about needing more than 4 days, that's exactly right. And it happens day after day with the children in the classroom. And then it's a gradual release where and you'll hear about how that works, where the teacher is learning from the coach and slowly taking it over. So that's kind of the big plan of how we make that happen.
So Chuck, is the budget implication the cost of the coaching time
Yes.
and consulting time?
You know, I think consultants and having experts are helpful, but they're time limited. What we need to hire are instructional coaches. And so their only responsibility is to work with all of the teachers through these cycles.
This next segment is are some teacher testimonials regarding the work with Jennifer Saravallo.
Hi, I'm Sarah Duncan, a fourth grade teacher at Cider Mill. And through the training I've received from Jennifer Saravallo, I am now fairly confident in giving the kids conferences, so individual reading conferences. It's been great. I've gotten to know my readers really well this year, especially from the training. I'm able to give them individualized instruction based on what she taught me, and each child gets exactly what they need in reading from me, and I feel like it's helped a lot this year.
Hi, I'm Randy Mondano. I teach 5th grade at Cider Mill. I've been teaching for 18 years, and I've always struggled with teaching reading strategies in a concrete way. Now that we're working with Jen Saravallo, she's taught us how to use explicit, focused teaching points that are strategies with steps, and now my kids can transfer the strategies with the steps that are independent reading.
Hi, I'm Tara Lynn Fonseca. I teach 4th grade at Cider Mill. In the few years we worked with Jen Saravallo, she's been integral in helping me learn the Readers Workshop and be a much stronger reading teacher for my students. I think this year she's taken it up another notch for us in the focus area of conferring. She's done a lot of work with us around how different novels for students in elementary school have different text complexities. And in order to learn the different text complexities as the teacher through the different types of books, I've been able to then, in my reading conferences with individual students and small groups, really work on differentiating the different teaching points that each student would need at their own level, which has really helped the class grow as readers.
Hi, my name is Jason Beasley. I teach 5th grade at Cider Mill, and I'm also the technology instructional leader at the school. I've been teaching for about 15 years, and just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the work with Jen Saravallo has impacted my teaching. As a teacher, I always struggle to get to a quick teaching point with students, and Jen offers a very prescribed way to get to a teaching point quickly on an individual basis, and that's the work that I've really taken away in working with her. And also the idea that at each level of text, they come with different complexities, whether that be with character or plot or theme. The idea that it offers different demands on readers, and as a teacher understanding that in a more in-depth way and using that with students has been very beneficial for us in our work. An example might be, for example, characters, and how in lower level texts are very linear, but as you go higher in levels, perspectives of characters change, and often secondary characters play a big role in affecting the main character. And I also enjoyed the work we did with Jen and fellow colleagues here at the school with coming up with very specific teaching strategies that we can immediately go back and work with kids in the classroom. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the work we've done with Jen.
So just to connect the work that was discussed here, is that Jen was our expert. So she worked with all of our instructional leaders to build our content knowledge. So the work that we were transferring to the teachers was solid, pedagogically research-based, and known to have a positive impact on student learning. And now we're going to move into what comes after the work that we did with Jen Saravallo to help that transfer.
Hi, I'm one of the literacy coaches at Cider Mill, and I just want to say that my role is really in supporting change in the classroom with the teachers. I've provided resources, planning professional learning, but most of all, the most effective part has been working one-on-one with teachers in their classrooms with their students right on the spot while they're teaching. Kathy Toll, who's written a book about literacy coaching, has kind of described coaches as a way to help teachers understand that change is not just a one moment in time. It doesn't have a start or stop. She kind of explains it as a flowing current and that it should be constant. So it's kind of exciting to be a part of this work where we're kind of changing our thinking about change every day in the classroom by realizing that we're going to continually change. It's not going to end in June. We're going to start up again in September and continue this work. So as you heard, Jen Saravallo comes to our school and gives us that important professional development. After that, on that same day, teachers are put into lab sites where they practice that with her feedback right in the moment, right if they've learned it. And then our job comes in as coaches. We started our work in the fall since it was brand new at our school and for many teachers to have a coach. We met with the teachers one-on-one, and we kind of talked about our indicators for success as a school with the component of workshop that we were honing in on. We talked about what our end work would look like, what we were working towards through this cycle. And we also explained what coaching model we would use, again, since this was a new way of doing professional learning. And the type of model we use is called a gradual release model of responsibility. And this was created by David Pearson and Maria Gallagher with students in mind, but they've come to learn that this gradual release is also very effective with the adult learner. And if you look at the slide up above, at the bottom, we kind of start at the bottom with what we call the 2. And that's where the coach is doing all the work. They plan and they teach in the classroom with the teacher right by their side with the teacher's students. And the most important part about this is that the teacher is not only teaching, but pausing to highlight and voice over their thinking, the decisions they're making in the moment with the student. And the teacher's right there to observe, jot down questions. Then we kind of move on to the next 2 bullets, where we're starting this gradual release, where the teacher's starting to take some of the responsibility for the instructional practice that the coach modeled. And the great thing about that is that when we're sharing and learning, while the teacher's taking over a little bit of the responsibility, the coach is there to scaffold, to give feedback, to give support, and to differentiate the learning for that teacher with her or his students. And also there's time in between for this reflective conversation. So when we conferred with one student, as the student's going back to their seat, the teacher can ask me questions, I can give feedback, and we can try it again. So it's really differentiating for that teacher at that moment. But again, I think the most important part is that they're doing it with their own students. So as we gradually release at the end, the teacher is doing all of the work, and the coach is there to watch and give feedback, and then we meet after to set goals for their future work. So it's been really exciting to be a part of that, and I'm going to pass it over to Lisa, the other coach.
I'm going to make one little connection because it came up. So somebody had asked about how you evaluate the work. So in the beginning, down at the bottom of the arrow, and then at the end, think of it as a pre and post assessment. So the administrators will go in before a coaching cycle, kind of see what's going on, and then we go in again for an observation, looking for those very specific indicators that have been transferred at the end of the coaching cycle. So to your point, I think, Glenn, it was you that had said, how do we know that it's working? That's the adult actions that we're looking for to show a change in practice.
And what would be the time frame from?
We're gonna
get to that, yeah.
Next slide.
Sorry.
I'm guessing it's 4 to 8 weeks.
We're so engrossed in the graphic, I didn't see the title.
That's a trick question.
It was a trick question.
This looks like a PowerPoint, but it's actually a video that's on continual play, thus the need for pausing.
Specific teaching strategies that we can immediately.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Hi, I'm Lisa Riley. I'm another one of the coaches. I work alongside many days with Jen Felipe, and our work together has been, like she said, very exciting this year. I've been teaching in the classroom and literacy specialist and a coach for 17 years, and I have to say this is one of my most exciting years because of the growth that I've seen, not only with teachers, but with students and myself and Jen. It's just been wonderful. So to answer your question about how does this look, what is the organization of it, and over the time period kind of thing, I'm going to talk about that now. But before I get into what the schedule looks like, I want to talk a little bit about the bullets. So Jen and I are the coaches, and Jen is on the south side and I'm on the north side. So she works with the Belden and Kent teachers, and I work with the Cannondale and Nod Hill teachers. So what does that look like? Well, there's almost 50 elementary school teachers at Cider Mill, just about. So that means that we each have 24 teachers that we're working with on this gradual release model and the coaching cycles. So we have to really think about what that would look like so that we really get into the classrooms of every teacher and work with every teacher. So we really spend a lot of time on scheduling the cycles, and there's different cycles depending on the instruction that we're giving. So, for instance, right now we do cycles with 12 teachers per cycle. 24 would just be too much. So we have 12 teachers per cycle. So the first cycle might last 5 or 6 weeks, and then with that instruction, and then we go into with Group A, we stay with that cycle, that instruction, and then we go to Group B teachers, which would be the other 12. And that would be like another 6 or 7 weeks. So that's kind of how it looks. And then when the instruction changes, then we set up cycle 2, because the instruction is changing. We have Group A teachers, 12 teachers, and then set up the organization again the same way. Does that make sense? Okay. So we've already talked about how the cycles are focused on specific targeted areas of instruction. Right now, we're focusing on the Research, Decide, Teach conferences, which is a very challenging instruction, because there's a lot of components to that. There's a structure, there's components, there's content learning, like Jason Beasley was talking about. So there's a lot that's involved with this.
Question for you: what's your assessment, having done this now, of the percentage of teachers that master what you're trying to get them to learn within one cycle?
Well, you know, I was weeding my garden before coming here. The skies were kind, and so I took my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old out, and I was weeding, and I'm just noticing all the things blooming, and I just started reflecting on the work that's been happening in the school, and teachers are really blooming. Teachers are taking this on, and I think it's because of the model that we're using, the coaching model, and I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the organization of the cycles. But I really believe that teachers are buying into this, and that there is a lot of growth happening in the building.
So you're thinking that people are, for the most part, 100% mastering the techniques within the cycle?
No. It's not a full mastery. It's a layering over time. Because of its complexity, it's not something that people could just do. But it happens in stages, and then when they have this hugely successful foundation, they just keep building on that.
One of the things that I really like about this model is that there's an understanding that teachers learn differently, just as children do. And so what's wonderful about the coaching and thinking about that is that we can differentiate with the teachers based on their learning styles. So the coaching looks very different depending on the teacher that you're coaching with. Some teachers are very verbal, and so the coaching happens, but then they need to contact us through email, or they come in and visit and, you know, kind of reflect and go over some things. Some teachers are extremely visual, so you know, that's taken care of in the conferences using scaffolding or things like that with the students, so they can kind of see what the students are working towards. You know, I really like that part of it too, because of that differentiation that we offer to teachers. The scheduled time, you can't really see it, but the scheduled time between cycles answers that question as well. So if a teacher feels as though, or thinks that they might need a little bit more work in maybe one of the components of the Research, Decide, Teach conference, they can sign up with us and meet a little bit more, practice a little bit more, you know, that kind of thing. So we really offer between the cycles time in our schedules that we can meet those individual needs. And we did our first teacher response time after the first cycle, and I was overwhelmed with how many teachers signed up, and really pleased and happy that I got to work with all of them again, refining what they were doing. So looking now up at the schedule, again, the weeks, this is just a very short example of what it looks like a cycle, but the weeks, like I said, I think we're in a 7 or 8 week cycle, something like that right now. And it's because we added many widths. You know, there's SBAC, there's all kinds of things that interfere. Whoops, did I do that? And so we offer many widths so that there's lots of opportunities. So every single week there is a schedule. And teachers know when Jen and I will be coming in. They know the exact time. We have, you know, expectations set up that when we come in that there's not, you know, a transition, but that the kids are independently reading so we can really get to the nitty-gritty and get our work done. So it's a lot of time that we're with the teachers. Again, the 2 is so that we can really demonstrate and model what the expectations are and what the instruction looks like. And then the widths are really wonderful because there's a time in between, that week time. Sometimes it's not, depending on the schedule, but 3 days, 4 days, whatever it might be, where they're practicing on their own what they've done. So they're practicing, they're taking notes, they're writing conference notes that Jen and I take a peek at every time we come in. And sometimes a conference might start with a question, that they have a question about something, a connection that they needed to make with a compliment conference or something like that. But so it's ongoing, and it's a very reflective time for them between the widths. And then, finally, like Jen had mentioned, there's the BOE, and that's when they take it on completely. The support has been given through the widths in different ways, and they take on more and more. And then the BOE is when Jen and I kind of sit back and watch them work with their students. And I know that this isn't on the slide, but I have to say, the kids are very excited about this work too, because when they're called up for one of these conferences, they float. I mean, they just can't wait to be met with, and there's that real individualized instruction.
Kind of a backtrack question. So Jen and yourself are the two coaches. What is your position at the school? You're not classroom teachers. No, so you are reading specialists or?
Literacy coaches.
So
Coaches, they're actually
certification is in-
coaches. They're reading,
Our certification was in reading.
What did you do last year?
What were you doing? Yeah, that's my
Reading
question. Yeah.
specialists.
We are reading specialists, but we also have, part of our job is we have intervention groups as well. So this isn't the whole piece. We write curriculum. There's a lot of our job. It's, lots of responsibility. This is the main one.
So you're reading specialists, and so prior to this year, you would have done all of your work just directly with the students.
And we did do some co-teaching
Yep.
within the classrooms last year and 2 years prior to that. Building relationships with teachers, being able to implement new curriculum, and helping them that way. So now the role has now changed again a little bit, where we're coaching them exactly where they are instead of just co-teaching with them.
They're actually able to have impact on more students through this
Right.
model.
Yeah.
Because they're impacting the teachers.
So how much of your job now would you say is acting as coach versus the other responsibilities?
I think this is the largest component.
How much
50%?
more effective has it made you?
This has been a learning curve for me this year. It's been an exciting one, and I love the fact that, 24 teachers, think about how many students there are with 24 kids. I get to know these kids. Kids are in the hallway talking about the book that they chose. They know me, and it's really exciting work. And I can see its effect on kids. It's just wonderful. It's been really terrific.
I'd like to just say that last year, when the board generously gave Cider Mill an additional reading person, we were able to change the department. And so we have 4 reading interventionists whose purpose, the majority of the day, is actually working with children in small groups. And then we were able then to assign Jen and Lisa
that's
as
what
reading
you-
coaches to differentiate their role, to work with the teachers who can impact the children. And they still do see some groups, but the majority of their day is working with the teachers, working with curriculum. So we very consciously changed the model so that we could do this, knowing how powerful it
Forgive me for pointing this out for people at home that are watching, but what you're telling me is that you have reinvented and re-engineered your activities for greater efficiency and effectiveness.
That's correct.
Yes.
Town needs to know that.
Thank you for
While
putting that
maintaining.
And I want to introduce.
Yes, while maintaining headcount.
Right, without
So-
adding to the head count. Yeah, we
So-
would do that.
Next, we were also wondering what students were thinking about all this work. So we went around and picked some students to talk to us about how they've grown as readers this year. And so we wanted to show that to you. And then we also have a teacher here to speak about her coaching experience. So first we're going to show you the kids, I think. Why isn't it playing? Or maybe we'll have Kathy speak. You want to do that?
Sure.
I'll work on this while you're speaking.
Sure. Hi, good evening, thank you for letting me be here. I am Kathy Wilson. I teach 3rd grade at Cider Mill, and this is my 29th year teaching in Wilton. So I've been around for a long time. I precede both my parents. They were wonderful teachers as well. And I've had the privilege of working. I'm currently in my 2nd coaching cycle with Lisa Riley, and I cannot tell you how much it has impacted me as a teacher. For the first time in 29 years, I actually can sit down and confer with a child and really get to know them as a reader, and really know where their level, where they are right now, and where they are just on the cusp of learning something new that we've been teaching, and what the next level and where they are to go. You're now ready for this. You're doing this great. Here's your compliment. Fantastic work. Keep on going. You're ready for the next level. It's absolutely mind-boggling. The other week I had a great conference with Lisa, and I had a student with me, and he was clutching his book, James and the Giant Peach. Now, James and the Giant Peach, written by Roald Dahl, is we know he's a wonderful author, and it's a level Q book, so that's pretty high. This wonderful student sat down with Lisa and myself, and we began asking questions during the research part, and asking about what the problem was, what problem did James have, and he's talking on and on and on, and Lisa's right there with me asking questions like, what was the first problem he had, and how did he get on this journey, and he's just so into this book and sharing all his wealth and knowledge about James and what kind of character is, and coming up with wonderful character traits. Then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he starts talking about, it's like this peach, it's like life. It's like life. And we're like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? And I'm listening, my mouth is open, and Lisa's right there. I'm writing stuff down, continue, and he gets it. He's on the cusp of understanding the metaphor that Roald Dahl has presented in the book, the peach. He goes, the peach, it's like life. Life is a peach. Life is sweet. Sweet. And I'm just mind-boggling, and he's just beaming and beaming that he's able to do this. So obviously that was the perfect point, the most perfect opportunity to say, I have to stop you. I have to stop you. I have to compliment you right now. You are at this wonderful level, and you understand the metaphor that Roald Dahl has used in his book. And you did a fantastic job, and you restate what they said. And of course, I've had everything written down, scripting everything, and I'm telling him exactly. And Lisa's right there helping me all along. And then she pops in, because I'm still stunned at this 3rd grader understanding what life is all about and everything. And I didn't even whatever. His mind was just up there. He was really, really reaching into the book and understanding. And then all of a sudden, thank God, Lisa jumps right in and says, now you're ready to do this. You're ready to look at the next level. You're ready to look at the lesson. The lesson. What is this? What is the lesson James is learning? Why did Roald Dahl write this book? What was the lesson he wanted you to get out of this? And he's like, oh, I can't wait to finish it. I'm not finished it. He clutched his book. He went back to his seat or his reading on the floor, and for 2 days he clutched that book. And he finished it the other day. He said, Mrs. Wilson, I cannot wait to have a conference with you. I cannot wait to tell you about what I've learned. And it just takes it to a whole another level. And I couldn't be more proud of being a part of the coaching cycle with our team here. It's just been a fabulous opportunity, and I think most of our teachers agree. So,
thank you very
Really
much.
and I think it's important. I think one of the qualities of good teachers is the differentiated instruction. Yeah, with Common Core, the objective is to have everybody at the same level at the end of the year. And I don't know if is there a conflict with that objective and the ability for you to continue to do that individualized instruction is so important to kids, recognizing where each of the kids is in the spectrum and what it's going to take to get them here and there. That's one question.
So let me answer that.
Okay.
So basically, we have an end goal for where we want students to be, but there's different pathways and progressions by which we're going to get them there. So what you heard us talking about was the individual pathway, the steps by which to get each individual student towards that common goal. Everybody has common expectations, but if we might have some students that even are reaching expectations and are ready to surpass the standards, and that's our job, to keep moving every learner forward either towards the goal are surpassing the goal.
And so you'll keep moving those students beyond?
Absolutely. Oh, yes,
Okay.
the conferring and the type of instruction that we're talking about is for every child.
And it's
individual.
What kind of feedback are you getting from parents, or are you getting parent feedback? I'm curious, are the parents noticing and aware of what we're doing? And are they able to see what's happening?
You know, that's a really good question. I know they're very aware of our concern about kids being in just right books. So they're aware that we're trying to match kids to texts that they could read independently. And they're very interested in, you know, resources to match them with texts and things like that. They're seeing work, I hope, come home where kids are having like Post-its falling out of their books with their thoughts and their thinking on it because they need to, that's data. I mean, I know that's a different way of thinking about data, but that's, you know, the kids' evidence that they're working towards a goal that they're going to bring to a conference and show their teacher. Either that or they have their reader's notebooks. So they're seeing things come home, but, you know, that's a good question, and maybe we should be, you know, communicating more directly with parents.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we do that.
Yeah.
But
The parents know.
Okay.
Yeah, they know.
Model and
But it
what
would be
we're
interesting to
doing, but
get
it's
to see what they're saying.
Absolutely.
Are they noticing what we're doing, the hard work you guys are putting in? And then, as successful as this appears it is, and your enthusiasm is remarkable, I just, is the process in what you're doing in reading, which is very difficult to do, transferable, and should we be taking the same approach with math?
Yes.
Yes.
So when Chuck said they want to gearing everybody up.
No, I'm dead serious, because we know we've got math issues.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
This coaching process and this form of professional learning is the way you would hope for.
All right, and we've done that without any headcount changes. So,
This one, yes.
can you do that with math without any
We
headcount
did
adjustments?
add a reading teacher
Right.
last year.
And we had reading specialists who we were able to redefine and refocus all of the players' roles.
Right.
We don't have math
You don't have all the players for
interventionists
the other
or,
subjects.
we don't really have,
So it won't be quite as easy.
what's that?
It won't be quite as easy.
But is that part of the process, is that part of the plan?
I would
Okay.
say
I think so.
in expanding the coaching program in of itself, absolutely. This is the way we want professional learning.
That's exciting. I think
Transform other subject areas.
Right.
Yeah, or you could try, so all these skills that you're developing, learning, and teaching, and you're being coached on are transferable to other subject areas, and our intent is to continue with.
Yes. The only thing, we have to be very careful with elementary teachers because they teach all subject areas.
Right.
So we have to be very systematic. They can't work on multiple things at once. It's just too difficult. So right now, we're trying to get the literacy down. Our hope is in the future, you know, writing would be the next area, which I think we're dabbling in that, but it should move to math and other areas.
Mike, do you have a comment?
I read a research study, I can't remember the source, but I was so struck by focusing in an area, literacy, like this, there is automatic transfer to
other
like science and social studies without any explicit instruction. Because they're not going to turn off the way they question and compliment and look at individual needs of students. It happens. And clearly Chuck has a progression that he sees unfolding for the district, but you will begin to see this, and it will be easier the second time around. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I'm being a little tenacious here in getting this, but
We're getting pressed on time, I know.
Yeah,
so-
that's fine.
You
If you
can
don't,
continue to
you
ask
can just,
questions, I just need to leave, but I just want to thank my wonderful team here. I'm very excited to be working with all of them. I think they're phenomenal.
That's wonderful.
Well, we didn't get to hear the kids, but I think the best testimony tonight, I mean, to hear from a teacher who has been teaching for 29 years and can easily just be like going through the motions because she knows her job and she knows how to do it, to be as energized and excited about coming to her job each day. And to Chuck's point and to Mike's point earlier, I mean, now you have this energized teacher, and that's all we could ask for, and that's the best we can ask for.
Can I give compliments to you because you saw my twin sister? She's the other one.
The conference that I observed, it was her twin sister working with Jen.
Oh, it was literally, oh, that's so funny.
The way she embraced Jen, it was just amazing.
That's neat.
So.
That's neat. Well, thank you very much.
thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to committee reports very quickly. Mr. Straub, I know you had an OPEB meeting last night. Anything to report?
I did, and I did not attend it because it was the 7th grade concert. But I did read the materials, and the focus of last night's meeting was a review of the asset performance. There's roughly $100 million in the combined pension OPEB plan, and performance in the first quarter was slightly off of benchmarks, but since the district hired new advisors 2 years ago now, by and large, performance has been consistent with the benchmarks that have been set by the town.
And based.
We'll get a report from the evaluation actuary dated July 1st. That'll come out in the fall, and that will, among other things, help us assess with the comparison to the assets, the funding level of the pension OPEB plan.
I'll be interested in getting your assessment on that, given your background. Thank you. There was a PTA council meeting today?
Indeed, and I just wanted to say that we're working with the PTA council. They are graciously supporting us in setting up 2 meet and greets for the parents and the public to meet our incoming new superintendent, Dr. Smith. And they are scheduled for Monday, June 2nd in the evening at 7 p.m. at the Zellner Gallery, and Monday, June 9th in the morning at 9:30 a.m. 9:30 a.m. In the Zellner Gallery as well. We discussed today whether or not we should limit it to just parents only or open it to the public, and general consensus among the group was go ahead and let the public know, and whoever wants to come, the more the merrier. And so they'll have refreshments, and it'll only be about an hour in length. We'll introduce them, give them a chance to speak, answer questions, and then just meet and mingle.
Gotcha. So they're both on Mondays?
Both on Mondays, the June 2nd in the evening.
7 p.m. you said?
Yes, 7 p.m. and June 9th
A week
in
later.
the morning at 9:30.
Perfect, both of them.
Yeah, we had to, there's, thank you to Molly for helping us juggle, his list of dates, everything that's going on, concerts and all this year-end activity, so it was difficult to schedule, but.
Molly, can we get that up on the website? That'd be great.
But
Is it-
PTA has
okay.
already started communicating it with their newsletters.
We'll try to
et
get it
cetera.
out through the notes as well.
Yeah, and we're gonna do they would like us to do a press release. So I'll talk to you about that
Okay.
as to whether or not that's appropriate in this.
Okay. Glenn, anything to add?
Yep.
Wonderful. At this point, then we move on to policy 5125, student records with Dr. Richard.
Following the coaching with the student records policy is somewhat challenging. I'd like to go through it quick. It's on for a first reading tonight. As you've seen, the recommended change is a relatively concise policy with a lengthy set of administrative regs. These regulations are driven by federal law, largely the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, known as FERPA, state statutes, and case law. So the regulations are really based in the legal mandates on schools with regards to this idea of records. I think just as a quick overview of this, some of the key concepts that relate to discussion of records in education, K-12, one is the definition of what do we mean by records, and you'll see it in the regs. A second is the concept of personally identifiable information. It's that how do we avoid giving out to people who should have no access to it information about children that identifies them, and the policy, the regs get into ways of avoiding distributing personally identifiable information. A third construct in the policy deals with access. Who has access to student records? What are the legitimate reasons that one would have a need to access? And the fourth concept is confidentiality, and that's one of the huge drivers of this, is how do we maintain confidential student information. The applications of this policy are seen in the following kinds of situations. A major aspect is special education. Special education, as you know, is very data-driven, very records-driven, and it has a huge, this policy has a huge impact on how we deal with special education records. A second area is on student records and non-custodial parents. Is how do we deal with it when you have families where you have a mom or a dad who's a non-custodial parent how do we protect their right to have information about their children, even though they are not the custodial parent. A third area that you've seen us talk about over the years, sometimes too, is in the area of student photographs in school publications or on the websites, is how do we protect students whose parents may not want to have them identified on videos or school publications. So that's an area. And then fourth area is records retention. And this is very much driven by statute. We are required, for example, to keep CUME records, if you can believe this, for 50 years. Student CUME records for 50 years. Other records we may only have to keep a couple of years. But there's a whole schedule that the law sets forth and a whole procedure that we follow. The changes in the policy language that we've worked on is really elimination of some of the former language that talked about why do you have records, and it really streamlined it a little bit and moved some other language in the old policy into the regulations, because the original policy that has been in effect for a long time had a lot of really procedural regulation type information in it. So you want to have a fairly concise policy statement followed by how the administration fulfills the intent of the policy. So this policy again is on for a first read. In interest, I know time is getting late, but we're more than willing to, as you go through the regs part of this, again, I apologize for the length of it. We worked in concert with our lawyers. This is the shipment and good one. We have a model policy service. So the regulations, and we worked with Julie Fay, who's their specialist on board policy, to make sure that our language was tight and appropriate, and that the regulations, I think, are much better laid out than the current regs, and really track all that we do. One other piece of information about this that we have done for years, Molly does a nice job with this, is the student rights and responsibilities document. We used to do this in hard copy. It's on our website, and in one of the early entries in the, it's under the parent information section on the website, but from pages 6 to 8, we have a whole section on student records, which is very clear, tight language for parents on what their rights are, and how to address issues if they have concerns about records and the use of records. And I think it's really good language that, again, tracks both the policy and the regulations appropriately. So again, this was on for a first reading. I would ask you if you haven't had time, because I know it's been this is for some of you the fourth night out this week, but if you have questions on the regulations, the board doesn't approve the regulations, but we want to make sure you understand what we've done here with this. And I think it's fairly straightforward. Please let us know the questions, and we can get back to you if we can't answer them right away.
Yeah, I just have one quick question, if I may. The yellow pages regulations are drawn from the state regs. Okay, and as I went through that, and I didn't see anything where there were timelines or time commitments or deadlines attached to requests being made for compliance.
I think there was one section that talked about 45 days. There is some language in there. I can't.
But there were others where there wasn't. So
Yeah.
would those compliance deadlines be part of the state regulation? Would they be buried somewhere in the state regulation, or?
No, I think, I'm trying to think in special education, which is, again, the 45-day is, I believe, one of the timelines, but there's also a regulation with regards to information relative to preparing for a PPT.
Right.
And I believe that's a 3-day, there's timelines on there.
Right, if I could just add, the regulations concerning FERPA changed this past July 1st. So the regulations previously were that when a district received a FERPA request, We had 5 days
Right.
to get it to the parent. It was changed to 10 days.
Okay.
So we now have 10 days. If a parent requests FERPA documents in preparation for an upcoming PPT, we try and get those between 3 and 5 days to the parent.
On page E, I misspoke, it's for records of regular education
Right.
students.
Yeah.
There's a 45-day, that's right.
Right, but for us, but there are, I didn't see any timelines for others, but but those are in the state regulations then, those
Yeah.
timelines,
State
Yeah.
but
regulations.
not defined here. Okay, that's why so they are there. We just have to go to the state regs.
I think there was
versus
language, though, on the PPT one with 3 days.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions? Okay, we now move on to our future timeline. Our next meeting is May 22nd. There is an executive session anticipated, which means we'll start at 6 p.m. with the regular meeting starting at 7 p.m. here in the professional library. As we do usually at the beginning and always at the end of our meetings, we have an opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to speak? Seeing none, I'd like to remind everybody that you can contact us via our email address. And with that, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes? Are you abstaining or voting?
Yes. That's true. Can I ask questions now that the meeting's over?
Administrator.
You can ask.